Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Wandering Road podcast. I'm your host Chris, alongside my co-host Dean, and for today's episode, we're going back to some cryptids, man. A few episodes ago, we talked about the Dogman. We kind of just did like a general episode on Dogman, some legends from around the world, different places of the United States, some legends from different cultures like Native American and stuff that people saw on the frontier. And we said in that episode, we'd come back with a couple of Dogman encounters. And that is exactly what we have for y'all today.
And we are officially, I think, like a week or so as we're recording this from October. To me, is absolute full blown spooky season. We kind of been like working up to it, but like, man, I'm so excited for October. I started brewing another batch of pumpkin beer. I have that fermenting in my closet. I use genuine spices this time, and like I kind of like bake the pumpkin mash in a certain way, and it looks like it's turning out really well. So I'm psyched for that.
You got to bring some
Oh
over
yeah,
again,
man.
man. That's awesome.
I'm still figuring out how to not make the bottles explode because like if you don't know anything about brewing, if you like beer, by the way, if you're listening to this, or if you like any kind of alcohol, like it's actually really fun to brew your own stuff. Beer or mead or wine, whatever. Literally, you could put anything in there that's sugar related, and the fermentation process should turn it into alcohol. And so it's like it's always, to me, it's very fun to play with the different flavors and additives and stuff like that, and just see how it turns out. And then you get to drink your own, get buzzed off your own beer that you made fresh, which you can't beat that. But the last time I made a batch and I gave it to you, I brought it over, like, what was it, like a year or two ago? I couldn't figure out how to get the carbonation right because I over carbonated it. Because when you opened it, you would like, it would just foam, like half of it would be lost to foam. So I'm still learning the process, but I think this batch I'm going to nail it this time.
I hope you do, because I am looking forward to trying it. But I will
Yeah,
say
dude.
what the hell did you make last time? You made the pumpkin. You
Yeah.
brought over
And
that, and you had was it a pilsner? What was it?
I think it was an American pale ale, like not an
Yeah.
IPA, it was an APA. It was like an American version, and it was a little bit stronger. But that one turned out, in my opinion, a little too metallic. I still think the pumpkin one was better, even though like we lost half the carbonation. I'll tell you what I miss when I came to visit you. Fucking right, man. Spooky Tooth. Okay, here's my pitch. If you are in or Western PA, and you know, like I would say this place is, to me, in my humble opinion, this place is worth at least an hour drive if you're within the vicinity of Pittsburgh, like around the area. It's called Fathead's Saloon. I think there's two locations. I know there's just the one I know of in the south side. I think there's another one somewhere, but they brew in Western PA, and it's very localized. They don't ship out very far. I've never come across a Fatheads beer beyond like Ohio. I don't know, some, like, you know, not very far. But every year they come out with seasonal beers. To this day, this is like we're talking like going back to my college days, like our college days, like 10 years plus ago. My favorite beer of all time, I would drink this all year if I could, is their Spooky Tooth Halloween pumpkin ale or pumpkin beer. I think it's an IPA, I'm not sure. But like, oh my God, dude. I know it's not for everybody. Like, not everybody likes pumpkin ale to begin with. I love pumpkin ale, but there's something about Spooky Tooth that the flavor and the crispness, and like I wish I would order crates out here if I could. And then they have a Christmas one, that's a Christmas beer that's really fun too. It's like really strong, but I miss Fatheads.
Yeah, definitely some good beer. So if you are in Western Pennsylvania and you're close to Fatheads, go give them a visit because their beer is really solid. But
Dogman. Here we go.
Dogman,
Spooky.
let's go. So the first Dogman encounter that we're going to talk about tonight is the Beast of Bray Road, which is one of the most infamous cryptid legends in America. So Bray Road is a rural stretch of road in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. So in this area, it's mainly farmland, woodland, and if you think about it, dude, it's kind of the perfect setting for someone to have some sort of creepy cryptid encounter, which is exactly what happened. With the earliest reportings, those date back to, I'd say, earliest the 1930s. We're talking about the 30s to the 70s. where there were whispers of sightings going back decades before, the modern hype of the Dogman, where farmers would report that their livestock would be mutilated, wolf-like creatures on two legs would appear on their land and harass their livestock, kill their livestock. Obviously, they were hunting and eating them, but at the time, they were shrugged off, saying that these are tall tales, there's like wolves or something, just just some regular predator is coming after your livestock. So, you got to do better to protect it. But if we fast forward in 1989, a local woman named Doris Gibson was driving along Bray Road at night. She believed she had hit something and pulled over to investigate. What she saw instead was a massive wolf-headed creature emerging from the ditch, its glowing eyes fixed on her as it began to chase her car running on two legs, keeping pace with her vehicle until she managed to speed away. Doris said it was far too large and too human for it to be a normal animal.
I think it was like a week ago, I sent you a TikTok video of that 911 dispatcher call of the guy driving down the highway, and he was like flipping out. He actually called the police, and it was a recording, like a legit recording of 911.
Oh,
And he was,
yes.
remember
Yes.
that? And the thing jumped in the back of his truck. I don't know how fast he was driving, but he was on the highway, so he must have been hauling. And he said something jumped from the berm, the side of the road, into the flatbed of his truck, and it was still in there when he was calling 911. And as he was talking to 911, or like, basically yelling on the phone that something was in his truck, I couldn't see what it was. He said the thing suddenly jumped on the roof of his truck right
Right.
above him and like started banging on the roof of the truck, and then suddenly jumped off and ran away. That is probably the most modern close example that I could think of that I saw recently, that this sounds like the similar thing that Doris Gibson went through back in the day. You said it was 89?
Yeah, it was
Or was it
1989, it says.
It was like a foggy October.
Yeah, it was definitely at night, and it was definitely in the autumn season.
Okay.
So I believe she was like driving to a party or something like that when she
Interesting.
ran over this fucking dogman, or she hit the dogman. Maybe the
Dude.
dogman was taking a nap on the side of the road and she just like ran over his foot or something.
Or maybe he was just angry he didn't get to go to the party.
Yeah.
Fuck you,
Yeah.
Doris. Whap! Apparently, she had scratch and claw marks on the side of her car.
Around that same time in 1991, so about 2-3 years later, Doris was not the only one that had a dogman encounter. It was just past midnight when 17-year-old Lori Andreezy was driving home from work. The road was deserted, her headlights cutting narrow beams into the night. Then she looked up and she saw it. There was something, a creature, crouched on the side of the road. As a normal person driving, you see that on the road, you think, oh, there's someone just kneeling on the side of the road. Maybe someone scavenging for something. You're not really going to pay too much attention to it. As she got closer to it, this person or thing stood up, and it was over 6 feet tall. It had shaggy fur hanging from its broad shoulders. She said its face was long and wolfish and had glowing red eyes that locked onto her. In a state of terror, Lori ended up pressing down on her accelerator, but she couldn't help glancing in the mirror. She watched as the creature took a few deliberate steps towards her car before fading into the shadows of the fields. Later on, Lori swore up and down that it wasn't a dog and it wasn't a man, but it was something in between. Witnesses tend to describe the beast in general as a hulking figure, standing 6 to 7 feet tall, with a muscular humanoid body covered in shaggy brown or gray fur. Its head was distinctly wolf-like, complete with pointed ears, a long snout, and sharp teeth. Many claim that its eyes glowed red or amber in the glare of the headlights, and that instead of its paws, it looked like it possessed clawed hands, which gave it a disturbing human quality. The creature was often seen crouched over roadkill, eating with animalistic hunger, but more unsettling was the way that this creature would rise up on two legs and sometimes even approach the people that have spotted it, and it seems to have possessed some intelligence, which kind of we could kind of harken back to that story that polar bear told us with the intelligence aspect, where these people shot at the dog man and it
Mm-hmm.
like harassed them for 10 to 20 years trying to get into its house, their house, which is just fucking insane to me.
And also the aspect of intelligence that goes all the way back to the Native American days, when supposedly, like, polar bear was telling the story about how, or there's legend of the dog man being at war with Bigfoot, like Bigfoot clans being at war with dogman clans or whatever. Someone should do a movie about that. I would watch that. That reminds me of, what was that old movie that came out in like the 2000s? It was like vampires versus werewolves. I think it had, was it Kate Beckinsale was in it?
Are you talking about
Yeah.
Underworld?
Underworld, yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite.
They should
movies.
do that. Yeah, man, they should do that, but with, instead of vampires, freaking dogmen versus Bigfoot. I would watch the shit out of that. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome to read.
So anyone listening, if you just Google it, the way I searched it was just dogman sightings. We had ended up, through our research, and ended up finding like a lot of really freaking terrifying looking photos. Most of them probably AI or fabricated, but there's some like trail cam photos. Like, if you look at one of them, I'll send it to you now, but like, if you look at this one, it kind of looks like a bear with mange, where, it's like it's just a sick bear. But then there's other ones where, like, fuck, I don't know what that is. Like, that does not look like any animal I know of. So I don't know. This, just the hulking nature and the ferocity, like the strength and the fangs and all that shit, like, to me, is kind of more terrifying than running into Bigfoot.
Yeah, because it seems like with Bigfoot, they just like see you and they're like, "Well, see you later.
Maybe
You're
throw some
never
like
gonna see
rocks at
me."
you. Like,
Yeah,
get the
unless it's
fuck away.
really pissed off. It's like you're in its
Right.
territory. It's like, get the fuck out of here, man. Get out of here. What? I want nothing to do with you. But to continue with the Beast of Bray Road, what's interesting is that in the early 90s, Linda Godfrey, a reporter for the Walworth County Week, she started investigating the growing number of strange sightings and gathered eyewitness accounts. And she compiled them and created a book called The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf, which gave this legend national attention and and this is why it was transformed into one of America's most enduring monster stories. And you know what's really awesome about the Beast of Bray Road is you have that aspect, a reporter looking into it, you have consistency among the reports, and we have multiple unrelated witnesses which range from farmers, teenagers, longtime residents, and they all describe the same thing in the same area within a short span of time. So it's not like you just have a single person coming out and saying, "Oh my God, I saw this 7 foot tall man that had like the head of a dog or a wolf, and it was the creepiest thing that I saw. I don't know what it is." It became a collection of eerie encounters that one was documented by a journalist and wasn't left to rumor. And now it's something that's part of Wisconsin's folklore. You know what's funny? Even till this day, people still drive on Bray Road at night hoping to catch a glimpse of the potential dogman that's out there.
Yeah, and one of the photos I had found when looking into Dogman is probably not, like, I'm gonna go ahead and go on a limb and say this is one of my top 5 all time favorite supposed cryptid photos, because, like, even there's, like, there's no way to tell what's fabricated and whatnot, but this to me looks at least relatively legit. Like, it's not clearly a doctored photo. It could be, but it looks like a giant beast. So, okay, go to Google, type in dogman sightings, and it should be maybe about 3 or 4 wheel scrolls down. And the first one that I came across was a Reddit post asking people what they thought about Dogman and stuff like that. But this was also posted. It's on a website called allthatinteresting.com, which is a WordPress. I think it's like a news article or an informational piece about Dogman in Michigan. From my research, it seems like this is one of the most enthralling parts of the country where you have dogman sightings. Like I said earlier, it goes all the way back to Native American times. The Michigan Dogman, got to keep in mind that this is also happening alongside sightings of Bigfoot, right? So you think about the UP. I've always wanted to go to the freaking UP. There was a movie that Jeff Daniels had done. He did a long time ago. It was called Escanaba into Moonlight. And it kind of reminds me of like kind of Pittsburgh style. You kind of like grow up in this area that's very unique in its culture, but it's also very outdoorsy and kind of like woods feel to it. Like, you go up to the cabin, you make your own sap whiskey or something, and then you drink and you hunt, right? So like I kind of grew up around that sort of life. So Escanaba into Moonlight, like even though it was Michigan, I'd never been there, it resonated with me. But every time I think of Michigan, I think of like the UP, which is basically the way that the Michigans they call the Upper Peninsula, which is the area of Michigan that is like completely outdoors, beautiful sprawling forest, and I think there's some mountain ranges, and you have the lakes and stuff like that. So that's where all these sightings take place, like not just Dogman, but also Bigfoot and other cryptids. And it's a very ancient, very wide, open, natural place where lots of stuff could hide and propagate. That's the scene. That's one of the reasons why I find the Dogman story coming out of Michigan so interesting. But if you go even deeper, you find that you start to get more modern reportings of Dogman sightings going all the way back to a pair of lumberjacks, unnamed, but I'm sure they have names, but I couldn't, like, it's way too deep for the purpose of this episode. But in the 19th century, so like 1800s, you had a bunch of lumberjacks or a pair of lumberjacks supposedly out there, in the UP or wherever, cutting down wood for the industrial boom that was going on in America and whatnot. They supposedly saw this 7-foot hairy bipedal creature that had, like you said, the face of a wolf, quintessential Dogman, right? And then from there, these sightings started to increase over time. But what's interesting is people inevitably tie it back into the Native American lore, because if you go back far enough, like the tribes that were up there near the Manistee River have the Odawa tribes. Apparently these people, these Native Americans, were just absolutely terrorized by the Dogman. And that's in line with what we talked to. If give the show a listen, the one that we did with Polar Bear, that was a really good one. We talked a little bit more about this, but apparently Dogman and Native American lore, like for the most part, Dogman just fucking terrorized the shit out of Native Americans, apparently. Like dragging them away, getting into wars with them, killing them and stuff like that, having massive battles. And it's important to emphasize to anyone listening who doesn't really know the backstory of Dogman. It's not just, like, we say Dogman, but it's not just one Dogman. Obviously, there's not just one roaming around. We're talking about like collective, intelligent, communal societies of dog men, dog people, or whatever. And they're coming up on these Native Americans like hundreds, if not 1,000 years ago, or whenever the tribe started migrating down Iceland Bridge down to North America. But here's the crux. Before I'm gonna kick it back to you, because I kind of went off on like a spree there to set up the Michigan Dogman. What I find fascinating is this is the first portion in our research of Dogman where you actually have the story pivoting to the description aligning with a skinwalker. And if you're not familiar, skinwalkers, they're essentially shape-shifting dark magic wizards or witches or whatever who could actually change themselves into animals. We're not just regular animals, but like twisted, large, anthropomorphic, terrifying animals. So that's interesting. So you have tribes of Native Americans not describing the Dogman necessarily as its own being. It's like an ancient black magic that allows whatever being has given its soul or given up whatever to be able to do this, changing between a giant 7-foot terrifying Dogman creature back to whatever its original form was.
I think the only thing that I would want to tack on is 1987. I think we talked about this on the first Dogman episode that we did. You had that DJ crew that recorded that song called The Legend, and they wrote it as a joke. It ended up inspiring stories of werewolves and cryptids, and they played it on air as an April Fool's joke, but people started calling in.
Oh yeah, I
But
saw that, right?
yeah, not to like, joke and dick around with them, but people called in and started actually sharing stories. And you're not talking about like one or two people. I mean, I'm talking about like dozens of people started calling in about and reporting these experiences through those decades of just, quiet whispers and rural legends. These guys trying to be funny opened up the floodgates for people to come out and start sharing their experiences. People that were coming out and reporting this, they claim to see it darting across highways in northern Michigan, howling in ways that didn't sound like any other animal. Because you can go on YouTube and watch Nat Geo and hear like a wolf howl, and it's like, when you hear that, it's kind of distinct. Okay, that's a wolf howling. And people are like, no, it doesn't sound like a wolf. And the thing that a lot of people always come back to is an emphasis on the glowing eyes. It always seems like these creatures have some sort of amber or red eyes. Now, I don't know what that means. Maybe if they are real, I'm starting to think that they are. Maybe that's just how they were born, these red eyes. But normally throughout the show, we've talked about certain experiences, and red eyes are what indicative of something malicious. So I don't know if these are like some ancient thing that's very powerful, that's just making itself known, that's native to that area, that people have just encroached on. You said about Native American stories and their history, they always tell stories of these cryptids and stuff like that. So who knows what this thing could be. But even hunters, they tell stories of, they feel like they're being stalked in the forest, hearing heavy footsteps circling their camps at night, hearing unearthly growls. So it's one of those things where you have a lot of people reporting this. Some of these people, like lumberjacks back in the day, and people that are hunters, they're like no nonsense type of people. They're there to do something in specific, get their job done, and get the fuck out. And when you start spooking people like that are not out there looking to find these creatures, but they happen to come across them just because they're in the general area and they're fucking scared and they're reporting it, I think there's something to this, man. But of course, we always gotta err on the side of caution. We got to hear the skeptic side of things, because skeptics tend to argue that the dogman is nothing more than a mistaken identity, maybe being a large dog, a large wolf, or a black bear that, is raised up on its hind legs. And what did you say a little bit ago? A bear suffering from what?
Oh, mange. Yeah. So,
Mange.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so a bear suffering from mange, look up a bear suffering from mange, and if it stands up on its hind legs, maybe you can confuse that for a dog man. Because when you see a bear shaved down, it looks pretty funny because they're not like as big as you think they are.
Check out Jaunty Haunts, a podcast all about the supernatural, hosted by Courtney, the self-proclaimed seer who, after 30 years of keeping it quiet, is finally sharing her secret with the world. She sees ghosts. Each episode, she dives into eerie encounters, true tales of the seen and unseen, and welcomes guests to share their own experiences with the paranormal. It's spooky, funny, and surprisingly relatable. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, you'll find something to love. You can listen to Jaunty Haunts every Monday wherever you get your podcasts. You won't want to miss it.
The Dogman legend or story that I want to go to next is the Beast of Land Between Lakes. The Beast of Land Between Lakes is probably one of the most chilling and violent legends associated with a Dogman encounter. This story casts a shadow over the sprawling wilderness between Kentucky and Tennessee. The Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area is an isolated, heavily wooded region with miles of trail and lake shores and deep forests. It's a type of place where silence feels heavy, where one can vanish into the trees without a trace. For decades, visitors and locals alike have always whispered about a predator in these woods, but they weren't talking about bears or cougars. They're talking about a massive, upright wolf like creature with a taste for blood. Witnesses that have seen this beast describe it as standing well over 7 feet tall with a heavily muscled frame covered in coarse dark fur. They say that the head resembled that of a wolf or a German shepherd, complete with the glowing eyes, jawline with razor sharp teeth, and unlike a natural predator, it moved fluidly on 2 legs and dropping to all fours when it needed to run at very terrifying speeds. The growl is described as deep and resonant, more like a roar than the call of any known animal. Hunters who have also encountered it in the woods say the experience is marked by unnatural stillness and they have a sense of being stalked, as if the beast knows how to instill fear into them before it makes itself visible. But the unfortunate story that is associated to this dogman is the so-called family massacre that took place in the 1980s. And this is a story that's been passed around by researchers and storytellers and locals for decades. So this story claims that a family was camping in the land between lakes and they were found brutally slaughtered with their tent shredded and their bodies torn apart with violence beyond that of a bear attack or a cougar attack. Some versions of the story say that authorities, when they got to the scene, they decided to cover it up because they wanted to avoid panic spreading throughout the park amongst the other visitors. And others suggest that authorities just blamed it on a wild animal and kept it moving. But of course, with a situation like this, there will always be whispers that the killings were that of a beast who had more power and savagery that surpassed any other natural predator. There are some other stories that come out of this general area, but they're not as horrid as the one that I just told with the murder of that family. Fishermen would tell tales of hearing guttural howls echoing across the lake at night, and they say these are sounds that would raise the hair on their neck and leave them convinced that something unnatural was prowling along the shores. Campers also claim to find claw marks raked across trees at impossible heights as though a giant predator had been marking its territory. Of course, there is always this skeptical view when it comes to these type of stories. Skeptics dismiss these tales as exaggerations, campfire stories, or a blending of old folklore with modern legend, because the area of the land between lakes had long been a place of myth, including Native American legends of shapeshifters and Native American spirits. But along with that, others tend to think that it is something supernatural, a werewolf type of being that steps directly out of nightmare into reality. Hearing all of that, what are your thoughts on the beast of land between lakes?
Now we're getting into the heavier portion of the cryptid stories where you have like actual death and dismemberment possibly associated to it, which kind of lends credibility to the portion of the story as we talked about earlier in Michigan, where the Native American tribes claimed that the dogman would hunt their tribes and they would engage in just basically dragging some of them off or mutilating them or whatever. That's pretty scary in the sense that, like, we talked about the dogmen possibly having a great deal of intelligence. So it's like the animosity, literally and figuratively, the animosity that they have towards humans. Like it doesn't sound like they're killing them for food. It doesn't sound like they're killing them because they encroached on their land or whatever. This is just like cold-blooded targeting and killing. So like, I wonder what that means, right? Like, I don't want to get too like sociology-esque, but I'm thinking about like, what would be the purpose of just massacring somebody and leaving them? Especially like, here's one more consideration on that. If you had a pack of wild dogs or wolves and they went to kill people and they like scratched and maimed, like, you would expect that either some of them would be dragged away or they would at least have some of the flesh stripped from their bones for consumption, because that, for the most part, in my mind, that's why the wild animals kill, unless it's purely territorial, which I think is rare, right? Like if an animal is killing, if a pack of animals, like let's say it was just wolves or something killed, like if they were doing that, they would probably consume at least some of the meat right? But these stories that we bring up, especially the ones where there's no one left alive to tell the tale, sounds like they were just killed. Um, and that's strange to me. And then the other factor that pops out in my head is it kind of ties back into like the what I was mentioning earlier with the two lumberjacks in the 1800s, where like one of the first more modern examples of supposedly seeing dogman. But if you have people who are out in the woods, right, and they hear these weird sounds or something and they cannot identify them, well, usually when you spend a lot of time in the woods, you're familiar with the weird, crazy, creepy sounds that are out there. I just watched a TikTok last night that I've never heard a pack of domesticated pigs before screaming and screeching in the night. But apparently somebody on TikTok like lived near a farm or a neighbor who had like, a bunch of pigs, and it just sounds like bloody murder hell 5 yards away. And if you didn't know what pigs sounded like, you'd probably be like, oh shit, there's demons coming for me. But the thing is, we're talking about people who spend a lot of time like lumberjacks, like people who live like, go out camping or whatever. They probably know what a deer sounds like when it's screeching in the night. Like it's a scary sound, or like whatever animals make are scary sounds, but this is different. You're having reports of people hearing these guttural, just absolutely indescribable sounds that just don't appear in nature in the time that they spend nature outside in nature outside and whatnot. So like those are two of the most powerful aspects to the story this portion of the story that pops out to me. I don't know. Does that make sense? How about you? What's clawing into you, no pun intended, for this part of the story?
What is clawing into me
Uh,
is trying to figure out what attacked this family. Because in all the dogman encounters that I've heard about, we've seen on television, this is the first time I've come across dogman actually killing like a group of people. It's normally
yeah.
livestock getting mutilated or some sort of animal going missing or a pet going missing because of the dogman. But like in this situation, dogman rolled up to a campground and just like fucked up a bunch, like a whole fucking family, and just brutalized them and just left.
But what's your best guess though? Like why? Like even if it was, who cares if it was dogman or not? Like if it was a pack of animals, which most people would probably believe because it's not cryptid related. But then, going along with the tradition and the context of the story, focusing on the cryptid side, whichever it was, pack of wolves or dogman, why do you think whatever creature did this would just leave them mostly intact? Like, why would it not drag them away for food or consume some of their
Um,
flesh? Like, it's strange, right? It's weird. It just like creeps me out.
it is strange, and yeah, I agree that is kind of weird. But the only thing I could think about, maybe something that could do this type of damage, is probably a bear. And maybe they were camped in an area where the
Mhm.
bear had like its den, or depending on
Cubs
the
or
type,
something.
yeah, there were cubs around or something, and the
Right.
bear was just being very protective of its territory.
Sure.
Um, and it
Yeah, I was
just
thinking that too.
killed
Yeah.
them. Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of, if it wasn't an actual dogman that did this. But hearing these three famous dogman stories or encounters or lore, what are your thoughts on the dogman? I think I know we touched on that a little bit on the previous dogman episode, but I want your definitive answer. Where do you rank dogman on the believability scale? Is it close to the top with Bigfoot, or is it more in the middle? Do you think it's something completely different that's being categorized incorrectly?
It's like past the middle rung on the scale of cryptids for me. I mean, it's better than Goatman was fun, but Goatman with an axe, man, like I don't know, I cannot wrap my head around cryptids using stealing and using tools. I think that's just like a horror movie thing. The one aspect of Dogman that I really like is you can tie in the historical story narrative all the way back to ancient American Native Americans, North American culture, and not just one tribe, not just one pocket. You're talking about an ancient story that has, even if it is just a story, it is still found across different Native American tribes across America, just like Bigfoot. Can't help but mention what we talked about with polar bear before, where you have this amazing concept that back in the day when Native Americans were the only culture and people in North America, they had these ancient stories of Bigfoot versus Dogman. And like, they would go to war over each other. Like There's all these crazy lores and stories. If you have time, go look it up because we didn't have time to cover it, but we covered it a little bit in that show or that episode with Polar Bear. And that's why I like Dogman better now, because in my mind, like if you asked me about Dogman 10 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, right. Okay. But what about Bigfoot? Like Bigfoot's way cooler. That's way more interesting. But when you actually dive into Dogman, not only do you have hundreds of people coming out and claiming that they saw something strange and staying anonymous, like what's the point of coming out and saying you saw something if you're going to be anonymous? You probably would want some attention if you're lying about it. But not only do you have that, you have a body count. Now, I mean, not to make light of the fact that the family was murdered, but I mean, I'm not saying it was Dogman, but I'm saying at least that there is that deadly aspect to the story as a possibility. Yeah, so that's my take on Dogman. Where do you stand with this?
Yeah, I think it's up there on the believability scale with the Bigfoot. I think there might be something out there that we just haven't discovered yet, and we're, seeing some sightings of it. And I think the fact that you can go back to like Native American legends and stories, and even some folks on the frontier reports of seeing this thing back in the day. So I think that lends some credibility to it. But yeah, folks, what do you guys think about the Dogman? You think Dogman's real? You think Dogman's fake? It's just a bear with mange? Or it could be something more sinister like a skinwalker. Who knows? Let us know. Hope you enjoyed today's episode.
You've reached the end of tonight's journey on the Wandering Road. The show is written and produced by me, Chris, and my co-host, Dean. If you've got a scary story of your own, or if you'd like to join us as a guest, send your tale to twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us on social media for more haunted fun. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, please rate, review, and share the show. It helps keep the lantern burning for fellow travelers. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your mind in the shadows, because the wandering never ends.